Now let's look at when we use the present simple tense. Okay? So, we have 5 different situations in which we can use this tense. Let's go through them one by one. First of all, we can use the present simple tense to talk about things which are permanent, which are more or less always true. Okay? For example, we live in New York. So let's suppose that this is where you live, right? Not just for a short time, but for a long time. And more or less, it's a permanent situation. It's always true for you. It doesn't mean it's completely true always, but most of the time, this is where you live. So that's what we consider permanent. So we could say, we live in New York. He works at a bank. So when we say he works at a bank, that means that's his permanent, regular job, okay? It's not a temporary job. It's not a job that he has just for a little while. That's where he works most of the time, okay? So we use this for permanent situations. Think about yourself, okay? Whenever you're trying to learn a tense, one of the great things you can do is to think of an example that applies to your life or to people that you know. What is permanent for you? So you could say a sentence right now, such as, I live in whichever city you live in. Or if you're working somewhere, and then you could say, I work. Okay? So you, by making these sentences, are already using the present simple tense. It's that simple. Okay, so let's look at another situation in which you can use the present simple tense for routines. So what's a routine? A routine is something you do regularly. Okay, for example, I wake up at 6 o'clock every day. Okay, I go to sleep at 11. So wake, go, these verbs are in the present simple tense because they're talking about a regular activity, a routine. We can also use this tense to talk about facts. For example, the sun rises in the east. It's just a fact. It's something that's a scientific truth. It's not something that I decided or you decided. It's just true. We could also say the sun sets in the west. Okay? Next, we can use this tense to talk about schedules. Because think about it, what is a schedule? A schedule tells us when something is going to happen. And that's kind of connected to this point, right? It's a regularly scheduled event. So for example, we could say, our class starts at 9 o'clock. Why are we using present simple? Because our class always starts at 9 o'clock. All right? It's kind of permanent. It's kind of a routine. It's a schedule. Or the flight leaves at noon. Not just this time, but the flight always leaves at noon. It has a schedule, and therefore we're using the present simple tense with the words starts and leaves. Okay, got that? Now, let's look at one other situation. There are some words in English, and they're called adverbs of frequency to describe how often something is happening. And these words are shown down here. But let's look at this sentence first. She always takes the bus. So always is a word that tells us how often something happens. And all of these words down here are just like that. So if always is like 100% of the time, we have other words. We have the word never, which is 0%. It never happens. It doesn't happen at all. So we could say here, she never takes the bus, right? We could also say, let's say 50% of the time, okay, she takes the bus. So we could say she sometimes takes the bus. Or once in a while, Okay? She rarely takes the bus. Or she often takes the bus. So when you see one of these words, which are called adverbs of frequency, that also tells you that you should be using the present simple tense along with these other situations. So if you want to learn it really well, as I said, apply it to yourself. Say something about your routine. Say something about what you always do or what you never do. And that way you are already using the present simple tense.